First of all, I want to say that I have huge empathy with the women concerned and affected by the recent issues relating to cervical check. I know the emotion associated with not being told, and I fully believe in the principle and practice of open disclosure. My brother died unexpectedly at the age of 19 after a routine appendix operation, and my family never got answers. That still hurts and bothers us as a family. But regarding cervical screening in Ireland, we need to focus on the future. And I agree with Dr. Scally, I'm not in favour of a commission of investigation. That would not be the best way to proceed. I think we need to put our energy now into the implementation of the 50 recommendations. And let us remember that cervical screening is screening. It is not diagnosis. It's about the population health rather than about individuals per se. There will be false negatives in screening programmes. For women's health, it is important to have both cervical screening and breast screening. The move to and the new approach HPV will significantly improve the accuracy of the screening process, increasing the chances of more cancers being prevented due to the detection of early changes. From a review of every 1,000 women screened, of the 20 women identified with precancerous changes, the HPV test will correctly identify 18 of these women, but still will miss 2. The current PAP test will identify 15 women, but will still miss 5. There will always be false negatives in any screening process, and we need to remember that as we go and make the changes we need. Dr. Scally speaks of a realistic prospect of the virtual elimination of cervical cancer in Ireland in the coming decades, a prize worth fighting for and for keeping to the fore in our deliberations this evening, I would say, rather than a commission of inquiry. Cervical cancer is the 4th most common cancer in women. Cervical screening has saved lives. According to the Scally report in 2015, the lifetime risk of getting cervical cancer was 1 in 135, as against 1 in 96 in 2007. So your odds of, because of screening, your odds of developing cervical cancer have drastically reduced. The NHS Screening Service states that it is estimated that cervical screening prevents 75% of invasive cervical cancers. Dr. Scally states unequivocally that in the case of cervical cancer, there is a clear and undisputed evidence that properly run screening programmes are of substantial benefit to the female population of the state. Dr. Scally also states that he is satisfied with the quality management in the current laboratory sites, and that's very reassuring. So whilst there are issues to be addressed to ensure that we have in place a properly run cervical screening programme in Ireland that women as a population and women as individuals can have confidence in, there is much we can build on. Public understanding of what screening is and what is not is critical. Understanding the concepts of sensitivity, i.e. to correctly detect the condition in people who have it, and also the concept of specificity, ability to correctly identify people who don't have the condition, is really, really important. The Minister said that in his statement, and we really need to get that message out. There is no screening test yet developed that can deliver 100% sensitivity. It is really important that that is understood by those of us participating in screening programmes. Some observations. What we need for the reform of cervical cancer screening in Ireland is clarity about task, as well as the governance and management of it. Chapter 5 of the Scally report goes into this in some detail. The governance and management of the cervical screening programme looked a bit of a mess. Look at this organogram. I mean, you need look no further than to know that there was a recipe for disaster contained in this organogram. You don't even have to have a degree or a master's in an MBA like I have to know that that actually was a recipe for disaster. There was chopping and changing in the cervical screening programme. It was subject to the vagaries of political and departmental expediencies and decisions. No HSE board, now a HSE board. Abolitions, amalgamations, absorptions, financial constraints. All credit to the staff who kept cervical check going in the middle of all of this. Looking at the organisational chart on page 26, as I said, a recipe for disaster. No single line of accountability, no clear answer to who was in charge, as Senator Burke said, or to whom I report. Who is my boss? What is my role? No job descriptions. No wonder the recruitment and retention issues exist for cervical check. something not in any way helped now by the fetid atmosphere of public outcry and media heat. To succeed, any organisation has to be clear about its primary task, its governance, management and division of labour. This is especially true of health organisations, and it is often sadly lacking, with catastrophic consequences. As the Minister moves to put in place properly run cervical screening systems and indeed systems for sláinte care, I recommend he take stock of the John Carver policy governance model, Brian Dives' model for decision-making accountability, and Henry Mintzberg's reflections on health systems and their organisations. All of those need to be taken on board as we move forward. There are a lot of people involved in cervical screening process. The woman herself, the clinician doing the smear test, the people in the lab reading the slides, those involved in any audit, and those who care for the person in the long run, i.e. the nurses, consultants and the GP. All need to be clear about their roles and responsibilities, particularly in relation to open disclosure. Each person involved needs to be very clear about open disclosure in the context of a screening, not a diagnostic process. To be clear about open disclosure in the context of the chill factor and the threat of being sued for medical negligence and large payouts. Any reforms of cervical screenings must have these clarifications at its heart. There needs to be clarity about processes too, including audits and their purpose. There are blind audits and biased audits. There are consequences arising from each. Dr Scally, whilst commending the intention to audit, the report was critical of how aspects of previous audits were undertaken. The Minister must ensure that audits, or indeed reviews, are properly designed with the input of clinicians in the design, though obviously not involved in the audit or review processes themselves. That needs to feature in the reform of cervical screening. Above all, the person, in this case women, must be front and centre. So I ask the Minister to take my observations on board to achieve the prize that Dr Scally spoke of a properly run cervical screening service that women in Ireland have trust and confidence in, a screening service with engaged and motivated, not scapegoated, clinicians, scientists and managers, and all working towards the virtual elimination of cervical cancer in Ireland in the coming decades, the priority as highlighted in this most useful report by Dr Scally. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.